He entered the underground market expecting steel-cold, simple, predictable. Instead, he was led past the whispering stalls and shadow-lit corridors to a girl sitting alone on a stone floor. A girl with a cage fused around her skull like a prison built by fear itself. The metal pulsed when he stepped near, almost like it recognized him. And when she finally lifted her head, her voice wasn't monstrous. It was terrified. "Please, if you take me, don't let them hurt me again." That's the moment he realized he hadn't discovered a weapon. He'd discovered a life someone had tried to bury. If you enjoy these darker, mystery-heavy HFY stories, feel free to hit like and subscribe. It's a small gesture that really helps the channel grow. And if you're thinking of someone who'd get hooked by a tale like this, go ahead and share it their way. All right, let's break this story open. He should have turned back the moment he crossed the threshold. From the outside, the underground market looked almost harmless, just a stone archway swallowed by overgrown roots, flickering lanterns dangling like dying fireflies, and a whispering wind that smelled faintly of metal and ash. But once the traveler stepped inside, the air tightened around him. It wasn't the kind of fear that made you run. It was the kind that made you listen. The kind that told you something powerful slept behind these walls, and waking it might change more than your life. He wasn't here to uncover secrets. He wasn't even here for adventure. He needed a weapon, something strong enough to stop the warlord marching toward his home. A blade, a relic, a curse, anything that could defend the innocent people waiting for him to return. Rumors had brought him to this place, the market where weapons breathe, where power is sold without names, where you trade pieces of yourself without noticing until they're gone. He didn't care. He'd trade anything for a chance to save his village. But he expected steel, not this. He moved past stalls glowing with forbidden lights. One merchant held out a dagger, dripping with venom that hissed at the air. Another dangled a relic wrapped in 9 locks, each one etched with shaking runes. A glass case displayed a jar of shadows that crawled up the sides like living ink, reaching for his hand when he passed. None of it was meant for him. Not yet. Not what he needed. The traveler kept walking, boots echoing on stone floors that vibrated with strange machinery beneath the surface pulses. Hums, long metallic breaths like something was caged deep below and dreaming. Looking for something special? A merchant called out. He shook his head. Looking for something you shouldn't? Another teased. He ignored them. What he needed wasn't on the shelves. And the market knew it. The head merchant spotted him almost immediately. A tall man with calm, unreadable eyes, the kind of man who could sell you a nightmare and make it sound like a blessing. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just tilted his head slightly, as if hearing something the traveler couldn't. Then he beckoned. The traveler followed, down a corridor where voices thinned and lanterns dimmed, past guards with expressionless faces, hands resting lightly on weapons that hummed faintly with restrained hunger, past sealed doors reinforced with chains thick as an arm, symbols glowing faintly along their length. The air grew colder with every step, sharper, not the cold of winter, but the cold of something unbearable being kept barely under control. Finally, the merchant stopped before a heavy curtain stained by time. "You came for a weapon," he said quietly, "but the kind you seek is rare, unpredictable, alive." The traveler frowned. "Alive?" The merchant lifted a hand and pulled the curtain aside, and everything changed. There, in the dim light of a single lantern, sat a girl, a child, knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around herself, shackles locked around her wrists and ankles, so tightly the skin beneath had darkened. But it was the cage around her head that froze him, a structure of brutal metal, bars interwoven like a prison designed by someone terrified of what lived inside. The cage pulsed faintly, runes glowing along the joints, like veins carrying a heartbeat of their own. She didn't move at first, didn't look up, Even breathing seemed like something she'd been punished for. The merchant nodded toward her. "Your weapon?" The traveler took a step back. "That's a child." "That," the merchant corrected softly, "is something stronger than steel. But the cage must never be removed." His voice carried a warning thick enough to feel. Still, the traveler stepped closer slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. Something about her presence pulled at him. Not fear, not revulsion. Something else. Something he didn't yet understand.
Then she raised her head, just enough for light to catch her eyes through the bars. Eyes full of fear, but also something deeper. And in a small, fragile voice cracked by years of suffering, she whispered, "Please, if you're going to take me, don't let them hurt me again." The traveler felt the words like a blade sliding between ribs. This was no weapon. This was a child shaped by cruelty into something the world didn't want to face. He turned sharply toward the merchant. "What have you done to her?" "Nothing," the merchant replied. "Her power was born with her. The cage is the only thing keeping it from consuming everything around her. Remove it, and you will not survive the hour." The traveler looked again at the girl. She trembled, not from cold, but from the constant effort of holding herself still, terrified that any movement might trigger punishment. Her fingers twitched every time someone inhaled too loudly. Her shoulders tightened whenever a shadow shifted. A life lived not in fear of herself, but in fear of what others would force out of her. He knelt slowly, hands visible, voice soft. "What's your name?" She didn't answer at first. The merchant chuckled under his breath. "She only speaks when pain is unavoidable. She was trained that way." He shot the merchant a glare. The girl swallowed hard, then whispered, "Please don't let them put the needles in again." His stomach twisted. This wasn't a purchase. This was a rescue he hadn't expected to make. But something else happened. A detail so subtle he almost missed it. When he held out his hand, not touching, just offering, the cage responded. A faint thrum ran through the bars, almost like it recognized him, as if something inside her stirred. Curious rather than afraid. The merchant frowned. "That is unusual." "Why?" "It means she's reacting to you. That only happens when her power—" He paused. "Like someone. Likes." "She bonds," the merchant said. "Too strongly. Too quickly. It's why we're selling her. She becomes dangerous to those who hurt her. Dangerous enough that even we can't keep her." The girl's breath hitched at those words. She lowered her head like she expected punishment for hearing the truth. The traveler didn't move for a long moment. Then, quietly, he asked, "What does she cost?" The merchant's smile was thin, cold, and knowing. "Everything you came willing to lose." Night had barely settled when they slipped out of the bazaar, but the girl clung to his sleeve like someone expecting a trap behind every breath of wind. The moment her chains were unlocked, she hadn't run. She'd frozen, as though movement could summon fresh torment. Now, outside the choking tunnels of the market, she stood in the open like she didn't know how to exist without a ceiling pressing down on her. The sky stretched endlessly above them, painted in dark blues and distant stars. She stared up through the bars of her cage. She hesitated, the word barely forming. "Cold." The traveler removed his cloak and wrapped it around her small shoulders. She went rigid, not from fear. Something else. Something like disbelief. No one had ever warmed her. No one had ever covered her for comfort. The gesture confused her so much she didn't speak again for a long time. They walked in silence through the forest, leaves crunching softly underfoot. Though she limped, she still tried to keep up, refusing his attempts to carry her. Pride? Fear? Or simply a child who'd learned not to burden anyone? But the forest reacted to her. Subtly, strangely, ferns leaned toward her as she passed. Branches swayed though there was no breeze. Even the air shimmered faintly, like the world itself held its breath near her. Once, the traveler stumbled on a root, and before he hit the ground, something unseen pushed him upright again. He turned sharply. The girl recoiled, shaking. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "Sometimes it just reacts." He knelt beside her. "Does it hurt you?" She hesitated, then nodded. The cage flickered with a soft pulse, runes glowing dimly like heated metal, as though the magic inside was constantly trying to break through, and the cage constantly forced it back down. Every flicker, every pulse, looked painful in a way she had simply learned to endure. Why do they keep this on you?" he asked. "They said." Her breath trembled. "If it comes off, I'll hurt everyone, even myself." She looked at him then, and though her eyes were shadowed by the bars, he could see truth buried in the fear. She believed it, believed she was dangerous, believed she was a curse wrapped in iron. But he'd seen her trembling when merchants approached. He'd seen how she shielded herself when anyone raised their voice. She wasn't a threat. She was a child conditioned to fear her own heartbeat. Yet something else stirred behind them, a sound too deliberate to be wind, too rhythmic to be an animal. Footsteps. The traveler's hand moved to his belt instinctively, though the weapon he'd come seeking was now the girl beside him. He listened. Branches strained. Twigs snapped. Voices whispered in coded whistles. They were being followed. He didn't tell her. No point in feeding fear. But her breathing changed anyway, shallow and fast. She felt danger the way a deer feels a wolf looking at it. She grabbed his hand. "T, they're coming." "How many?" "More than before." "Before?" "When they sold me." Her voice cracked. "They always follow. They always try to take me back." The traveler pulled her behind him just as figures stepped from between the trees. 6 of them, weapons drawn, eyes hungry. Hunters. One stepped forward, torchlight stretching his shadow like claws. "Put down the girl," he said. "She's worth more than your life." The traveler stepped in front of her. "She's not for sale." The hunter smirked. "Oh, she's not yours to claim. That cage didn't come cheap. And your village won't matter if you're dead before dawn." The girl trembled violently behind him, the cage pulsing as her fear spiked. Runes glowed brighter, fighting to suppress a surge of power she didn't understand. Another hunter pointed his blade. "Remove the cage," he mocked. "Let's see what she really is." "No!" she cried, voice breaking. I can't control." A metallic scream vibrated from the cage, sharp enough to rattle leaves from branches. The hunter stepped back. "So the stories were true," one whispered. "Even chained, she's too much." The traveler whispered without looking back. "I won't let them take you." But when the hunters advanced, blades raised, the girl broke, not outwardly, inwardly. A sound, small and terrified, escaped her. "Please don't make me hurt anyone." And the ground shuddered. Leaves tore from branches. Roots twisted beneath the soil. Even the air thickened like something massive had inhaled the entire forest. The hunters froze. Though the cage fought to suppress the power, tremors leaked through, violent pulses stretching outward in concentric waves. One hunter fell to his knees. Another dropped his weapon. A third screamed as the shadows around him bent unnaturally. The traveler grabbed her hand. "We need to run." "But You're not hurting anyone." His voice was steady. "You're trying to survive." That was all she needed. They fled through the trees while the hunters stumbled behind, shouting orders, calling for reinforcements, some fleeing the forest entirely. The tremors faded slowly as her panic weakened, leaving her breathless and shaking. When they reached the ruins of an old stone tower, he guided her inside. Its broken walls offered shelter, and for the first time, the night air felt still. She sank to the floor, hugging her knees again, the position that felt safest to her. "I wasn't cursed," she whispered into the dark. "I was created." He didn't interrupt. "They took the children from my village. They wanted weapons that could think, that could react, that could destroy armies just by feeling." Her voice twisted, filled with a pain he couldn't imagine. "I didn't want to hurt anyone. I only wanted to protect the others. But when they threatened my friend, something inside me broke." She touched the cage lightly. "So they built this to stop me, to control me, to make me a tool." Her breathing hitched. "If you take it off, I might lose myself. I might hurt you." The traveler sat beside her. "Then we'll learn control together." She froze. not in fear. In disbelief. The runes on the cage dimmed, barely but noticeably, as if responding to hope for first time. Her voice came out small. No one has ever chosen to stay. He placed a hand gently over the cold metal. I didn't come for a weapon, he said. I came for something that could save a village. Turns out, I found someone worth saving instead. She swallowed hard, and for the first time, she whispered, Please don't leave me. He didn't. He wouldn't. Not now. Not with hunters closing in. Not with dawn approaching. Outside, branches crackled again. More footsteps. More shadows. More enemies. The night wasn't done with them. Not even close. Dawn crept in slowly, its first pale rays slipping through the cracks of the ruined tower, like shy visitors afraid to enter. The traveler had barely slept. He sat with his back against the cold stone wall, listening to the girl's breathing, light, fragile, uneven, like someone still expecting nightmares to wake her before a dream could form. Outside, the forest murmured. Birds chirped cautiously, the wind brushing through leaves with a tired sigh. But beneath the peaceful sounds, he heard it. Footsteps, distant but closing in. The haunters hadn't given up. The girl sat beside him, arms wrapped around her knees. The cage's bars cast long shadows on her face in the soft morning light. She watched the sunrise as if it were a story she'd only heard rumors of. It's beautiful, she whispered. He nodded. You've never seen one? Not without bars. She hesitated, and not without pain. The runes on the cage flickered. They pulsed whenever she felt too much. Fear, sadness, hope. It was as if the cage was punishing her simply for feeling human. He hated it. Hated the idea that someone had decided her emotions were dangerous. But he also knew the merchant's warning. Never remove the cage. Her power, if unleashed, could swallow the world. She turned to him suddenly. I want to tell you something. He waited. When they made me, she said softly, they didn't just lock away the power. They taught me to be afraid of myself. They said my emotions would destroy everything. They said the people I love would die because of me. He felt her words like stones dropped into still water. But you, her fingers curled into his cloak. You're not afraid. I'm not afraid of you, he said. I'm afraid of what they've done to you. She took a shaky breath, her voice trembling like a thin thread stretched too far. If you believe I'm more than this cage, then... Her hand shook violently. Use the key. He froze. The small metal key lay in his pocket. The merchant had given him two, one for her chains, one for the cage. The second key had felt heavy ever since he touched it. Too heavy, like it carried more than metal. You don't have to. I want to, she whispered. I don't want to be a weapon anymore. But if I remove it, I know. Silence fell thick between them. He heard the forest again. The hunters' voices clearer now, closer than ever. They didn't have more than a few minutes. He looked at the girl. Tiny, trembling, terrified, but not weak. Her hands shook, but she held them out anyway, not offering herself as a tool, but as a person choosing her own fate. If you believe I'm more, she repeated, voice cracking, then let me try. He took the key. For a moment, his hands refused to move. The fear wasn't for himself. It was for her. If her power surged uncontrollably, she'd be the first to suffer. And she'd already suffered enough. Outside, a hunter called out, Search the ruins. They were out of time. He met her eyes through the bars. Do you trust me? She nodded. I trusted you the moment you didn't hit me. His chest tightened. Then, slowly, carefully, he slid the key into the lock. The cage hissed, like a living creature waking. Runes flared, blinding bright. The metal vibrated. The girl gasped, deep, painful, shuddering. He turned the key. The lock clicked, and the world stopped. Light exploded from the cage, silent but overwhelming, bursting outward in a sphere that illuminated the entire tower like a rising star. His hair lifted. The stones trembled. His heartbeat roared in his ears. The girl screamed, but not in fear. In release. The cage cracks glowed. Lines of pure energy split through the metal, fracturing the bars like glass under heat. One by one, the pieces shattered and fell away, dissolving before they even hit the ground. He shielded her as best he could. Then silence. She collapsed into his arms. The forest went still. Even the hunters halted mid-step, voices dying in their throats as shock washed through the air like a tide. The girl lifted her head slowly. Her eyes glowed faintly, bright but not wild, strong but not dangerous. Free. She reached up with trembling fingers and touched her face, her skin, her own skin, without bars for the first time in years. She cried, not a scream, not a sob, just a soft, broken little sound of wonder. I can feel the sun, she whispered. A branch snapped outside. The hunters surged forward. The girl's breath hitched, but her power didn't explode. It didn't spiral. It obeyed. The air shimmered around her, forming a thin wall of force, not violent, not uncontrolled, just protective. The travelers felt the air thicken around him too, like a shield. You're controlling it, he whispered. She wiped her tears on her sleeve. You helped me. The hunters burst through the doorway and stopped instantly. The air rippled. The ground hummed. Trees bowed inward, roots twisting, but the force didn't lash out. The girl raised a hand, trembling but determined. You won't hurt us, she said. Her words weren't a threat. They were a boundary, and the forest responded to her voice. Branches curled downward, slamming the hunters' weapons aside. Roots wrapped around their legs, pinning them. The wind rose just enough to push them back, but not enough to harm. The hunters struggled, then froze, then fled. All of them, running from the child who had once trembled before them. When the forest grew quiet again, the traveler exhaled the breath he'd been holding. The girl collapsed into him, exhausted but alive, free, and in control for the first time in her life. What now? She whispered. He wrapped an arm around her. Now, he said softly, we go save my village. She nodded into his chest. And after? She asked. He smiled. After we figure out who you want to become. She didn't speak, but she held his cloak tighter. And for the first time since the day she was caged, she believed she had a future. If you enjoyed this HFY story and want more tales like it, stories where humanity steps up, where compassion changes destinies, go ahead and hit like. It helps more than you think. And if you want to catch the next story the moment it drops, feel free to subscribe and ring the bell. Got a title idea? A weird prompt? Something dark, strange, or emotional? Drop it in the comments. Your idea might become the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.